So we're talking, and then I'm just assuming you're just not listening. That's
Matt,
what I'm
you know
assuming.
what he's saying. Matt, we've been
You're
over this like 3 times. You know what he's
quiet.
saying. You're
Please
not stupid.
don't tell me what I know and what I don't know.
No, because
Go on, man.
you're
What?
being like silly. You're being evasive. It's clear
Yeah,
what he's
thank you.
asking.
It was nice talking to you.
Hang on.
Okay, Matt, have a great day.
Yep, knew that was gonna happen.
Unbelievable. Agnosticism is incoherent because
I'm back, so if
So,
Roger wants to
yeah,
continue, then we can.
yeah. So look, we talked about before what we might want to do in this case, and I'll appeal to Roger. He's been going at it a long time, and so is Jay. We talked about clearing the stage, and I would remain as a sole moderator, and I would set time limits for the timer to give each Roger and Jay a chance to go back and forth. But now I'm asking Roger and Jay, first of all, do you still guys want to engage in this, or do we want to move on to a different format?
I can talk to
What?
him. If you guys don't want to do it here, I can start my own room, or somebody else can start a room, and I can go there. If you guys want to stay on the stage.
I'm fine with doing it. I might get a delivery order at some point, but other than that, I'll be fine.
So Jay, if you're happy to do that, I'm going to start moving people to the audience, and I'm going to remain as a sole moderator, and I will get a timer. And so what I want to make sure that happens this time is that everyone is given an ample time to ask a question, an ample time to respond and expand without the other person, interjecting. So, what kind of format do you guys feel comfortable with? Do you want to do a question and then give a certain amount of time to respond, along with a follow-up question with the other person to respond, and then something along those lines, or
It can just be free form as long as you can just make sure we don't overtalk. That's fine. I don't have to be like
uh,
timed, or he does. I don't think he needs to be timed, so I think
okay.
we have
Uh,
private
okay,
moderators.
then we're gonna let it free form. But if I feel like somebody is over talking or not letting the other person expand on the point, then I'm gonna step in and mod. And if either of you feel that I am abusing my mod powers, please let me know, and I will take that into consideration. So, Jay, since you're gracious enough to come back, and Roger's willing, we'll let you start out with whatever statement or question you may have for Roger.
Okay. Let's make sure it's clear here. Okay, my position. Now, I also want to make sure that when I affirm things, okay, it's probably a fault of myself that sometimes when I affirm things, I don't make sure at the onset that we're not equivocating on terms, right? Because after I affirm that, I do bring to light that there are two different senses in which these things can be meant, and that could lead to equivocation and confusion. So let's make sure my position is clear, okay? And what I expect and what I would like to hear from Roger, um, first off, what I'm explaining to Roger is that, or I'll just say to you, Roger, what I'm explaining to you right now is that you can't be neutral, okay? And so the reason for that, right, is because of the fact that when you're invoking a proposition, then you are going to be invoking either that a proposition is true or that a proposition is false, okay? And propositions that are entailed from that are going to entail either the truth of that entailed proposition or the falsity of that entailed proposition, okay? And so what we're going to be dealing with here, Roger, is when somebody is predicating in the world, they are affirming a proposition with reference to God because they're affirming a metaphysical framework. And by metaphysics, once again, we're not talking just in a general category. We're talking very specifically about the nature of reality, right? The nature of how things are. Okay, maybe your ontology, your worldview, your model of reality. Those are the synonyms I use for this term. Okay. Um, and so that is because you're affirming a metaphysic, because God is an answer to one such these kind of metaphysical questions, then you're going to either be affirming, meaning that you're going to affirm the proposition that God exists, or you're going to be denying that proposition that God exists in virtue of the implication, right? So that is my position. Now, if you can represent it properly and give a rebuttal to that, I would be more than happy to hear that.
So I immediately created this room.
Right. Okay. Let me just just temporarily mute Jeff. I feel like there's some background noise. All right, fine. So, if I understand your position correctly, what you more or less stated was, whenever somebody makes any kind of predication, that predication must be grounded or rooted in some particular metaphysical worldview, and then that points to God. Okay, fine. So, few things to say
Well, that's
here.
not. That's not. Well, so let's make sure we're not equivocating here. When I say it, I'm not saying it points to God in the sense. What I'm saying right now is that when somebody is predicating, they're invoking a model of reality or a metaphysic, and that model of reality, whatever it is either going to entail that God exists or that God does not exist, because God is an answer or in a category of a model of reality or a metaphysic. So I'm not saying that they are referencing God or that God actually exists at this point. I'm just saying you can't be agnostic because you're affirming a proposition as to whether or not God exists.
Okay, got it. Few things to unpack here, and I'm just going to go in order of the points that I wrote them. So you said that if I invoke some kind of proposition, I can't be neutral towards the existence of God, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Can my scale evoke the proposition that I'm 135 pounds?
No.
So when I step on the scale, it's not evoking the proposition that I weigh 135 pounds?
I wouldn't say that scales invoke propositions.
Then what is it displaying?
A number?
Okay. Is that a truth statement?
No. Numbers aren't truth statements.
Well, is it true that I weigh 135 pounds?
Yes.
So the scale is accurately reporting the fact that I weigh 135 pounds.
Yeah, I mean it's reporting it's reporting the weight.
Okay, so it's
giving a
accurately
number to
reporting
you.
it. And is it also true that in order to make true statements, one needs to reference the existence of God, implicitly or explicitly?
That's not my argument right now.
But did you or did you not say that before?
Yeah, but that's not like what I'm talking about. That's not like
Hang
relevant to
on,
this
hang on,
discussion. Like you
Robin.
can ask me, did you go to
You,
McDonald's yesterday? But I mean, sure. I mean, okay, but
we're not.
why is that relevant to the discussion?
We're not talking about McDonald's. We're talking about what you said before, which is fair game. This is a public forum. Did you or did you not say that in order to make truth statements, they must refer to or be grounded in explicitly or implicitly God? Did you
Yeah,
say
that's
that?
my position. Yes, that's my
Right.
position.
So you
I
did
have
say
said
that.
that in the past. Yeah,
Right. So you
I've
did
said
say
many
that.
things in the
Okay.
past. I've said a
Sure.
lot of
Sure.
things in the past, though. I mean,
Right.
why
And
is
they're
this
all fair
relevant to
game.
the
And they're all
conversation?
and just because we're adults, they're all fair game. So you said
Not
that.
necessarily. No. Okay. All right. Go ahead.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. No. I mean, we already agreed that a lot of what you said in the past was wrong. We won't talk about that. We'll talk about the new stuff. So it seems like what you're saying is that in order to make a true statement, whatever is making that statement has to refer to the existence of God. But you did just agree that my inanimate scale is making a true statement about my weight, and it doesn't seem to refer to the existence of God. So it seems like we have a counterexample.
No, I didn't say that as making the statement about God.
Then what is it doing?
I didn't say it was even making a statement. I don't even know if
So
I would
what is it doing?
characterize that as
What is
making
it
a
doing?
statement.
Is it accurately reporting to me my weight?
Yeah, because there are
Okay,
factors
sure.
that are being imposed like
So
on
is it
like
okay?
they're
So
just.
okay, stop. It's accurately reporting my weight.
Hmm.
It's accurately reporting a fact in the world, correct?
Yeah. Hmm.
Okay, so in order to accurately report a fact in the world, pursuant to what you said hitherto, you must explicitly or implicitly refer to the existence of God. Yes or no? Did you say that?
Yeah.
Okay, so does that mean that my scale must be implicitly or explicitly referring to the existence of God, correct?
Sure. Yeah. I mean,
Okay,
I don't think that
QED,
scales make
QED,
propositions, but granting
QED,
that, then yeah,
QED.
the scale would be doing that. Yeah.
Okay, QED. I think that's a reductio against your position, so let's keep going. I think that the audience will see that that's implausible. So
Oh, but that's not
then
relevant to my original claim to agnosticism, though.
it's relevant to something that you said, and everything that you say is fair game. So let's just continue.
Wait, but no, I wanted to get an answer to the question I asked you. Are you just going to ignore what I said in my opening remark?
Yeah. Well, if by ignoring you mean I'm going to respond to what you say, then yeah, I'm going to respond to what you say.
No, I'm saying respond to what I just said now. Like I asked
Okay.
you a question and I want to get an answer to the question. Are you going to ignore the
Okay,
question?
fine. I'll ignore what you said in your opening then, if you don't want to talk about it. What's the question?
So the question is whether or not you have a rebuttal to whether or not you can be agnostic.
Yeah, I think I do.
Okay, what is does the argument or does the conclusion necessarily follow from the premises where if you're making a statement about metaphysics as I've defined it, you're making a statement about whether or not God exists,
Yeah,
therefore you're not neutral?
yeah. I mean, I've talked to people like Yujin Nagasawa about this, and he's agreed to my argument. I mean, what I'm trying to say specifically is that there are independent arguments that I could give about the rationality of agnosticism, but specifically, I thought that the format of this was you made a little bit of an opening statement, and I get to respond to that opening statement. Yes or no?
Yeah, but what you just said wasn't a response to my opening statement. You were
It
talking about whether or
was.
not
It was.
scales.
The
You
people
were talking about whether or not scales reference God. It's
people
not
in the
about
chat
agnosticism.
could acknowledge or not acknowledge that you said that in order to make a true proposition, it's not the case that I could be neutral about the existence of God. I gave an example of something that does make a true proposition. Why is Biscuit here? Boot. Anyway,
Well, I don't think if you're just gonna put it like in that
that's a
if you're gonna
counterexample. It's
formula
a
no, but
counterexample.
like no, but listen. The problem is that I don't think scales invoke propositions, but assuming that they do, then they would just reference God. So
Okay,
it's not, I mean, the only argument you'd have is just like it's counterintuitive to you, probably because you know that scales aren't like minds or anything.
right? Yeah,
So
it's
that's why
counterintuitive. Yes,
I wouldn't even say that they invoke propositions.
your
So
argument.
it's
Your
not like
argument. The conditional generates counterintuitive results, and on the basis of those counterintuitive results, we could regard the antecedent principle as itself counterintuitive. That's fine. Move
why is
on.
it counterintuitive?
Because it produces counterintuitive results.
Yeah, like why no, but like what does it mean? Like why is it counterintuitive that
Because it
the scale
produces
references God?
counterintuitive results. Produces counterintuitive results.
Okay, it's not a substantive answer to my question. Why is it
No, it is.
counterintuitive?
It's
Like
counterintuitive because it seems
why is a statement? Yeah, obviously. Okay, why is it counterintuitive?
because it seems counterintuitive that my scale is referring to the existence of God when it tells me my weight.
Yeah, why is that counterintuitive to you?
Because
Is it
scales
because
are
scales it
inanimate.
doesn't
Because scales don't have
right, okay,
minds.
exactly. Right.
Scales
They
don't
don't
have
have minds,
intentional
right? So
states.
that's
They
why
don't
I
have
rejected
intentional
at the
states.
onset that they make like truth propositions. Now in the broader ontological sense, of course they reference God because the scale only exists and possesses its actuality and intelligibility because of God. So in that sense, yes, but I'm not gonna say that like it's invoking a proposition. Yes, it's accurately representing your weight, sure. But I'm not gonna characterize that as it invoking a proposition because I think that's something that only minds can do. But
Okay, all right, fine.
granting
Like
what you're saying, I would just say that
here.
yes, it is referencing God.
Okay, sure. If you, QED, I think that proves that didn't work. I think that's a ridiculous conclusion. Let's just go on to the second point.
Well, it's
Second point.
ridiculous because you brought it up and you don't even agree with like you don't even agree that they're minds. Like unless you just think that anything can evoke propositions, like a
When
rock
did you
falling
say
down
when
the.
did J. Robin point to me the time when I said there are no minds?
No, I didn't say that you said that. I
No,
said that you don't think.
you said I don't think that there are any minds. You said that's what you
No, I
just
didn't
said.
say that. I didn't say you think
Did
that. I
you say
said
chat?
first of all, I gave a conditional. I said unless you're saying X, Y, Z. First of all, okay, and then I didn't. The content of that wasn't you don't think they're minds. I said that unless you don't think that or unless you think that propositions can be uttered by non-minds. That's what I said. So I didn't say you don't think there are any minds.
Okay,
And that
whatever.
even then, like I said unless it's the case.
This is
So
the mess. Let's just go on to my second point. So that was my first point. Second point is you said, and I just wrote this out, so I might you might need to fill in the gaps because I just wrote symbols. But so if I have a proposition, then that must refer to some metaphysical worldview, and then that metaphysical worldview must refer to either the existence or the non-existence of God.
yes.
Okay. So are you aware of what a hypothetical syllogism is?
Um, is that like transitivity? Like A implies B, B implies C, A
Yeah.
therefore C, or A? Yeah.
Do
Okay.
you agree that hypothetical syllogism is a valid argument form in the majority of textbooks
Yes.
about introductory logic? Okay, so we
Hmm.
have P implies M. So P, a proposition, implies a metaphysical worldview. A metaphysical worldview implies A or not A, right? So now what you're saying is a proposition implies either that God exists or it's not the case that God exists. And we're back to that disjunction.
Yeah, like if you're invoking a proposition, you're going to be invoking implicitly a proposition about whether or not God exists.
Okay,
because
sure.
you're invoking a proposition with reference to the metaphysical reality as
But how
metaphysics
does
has
that
been defined
demonstrate
here.
that God the only thing that that shows is that all my propositions speak to whether or not God
Yeah,
exists.
exactly. That's all I'm saying. There's nothing
Right.
more, nothing less.
Sure. I mean, I could contest premises about this, but like I suppose like what the overall overarching issue about this is that first of all, I don't think that when I make a proposition, I'm maybe necessarily referring to a metaphysical worldview. I mean that can be
Are
contested.
you not making truth claims? Are propositions not truth claims?
Propositions are truth claims, yes.
Okay. And now when you reference truth, okay, and also you're by invoking the proposition, the subject predicate, you're talking about um, correlativity between objects and attributes and so on and so on and so forth. And those are all metaphysical in the context of, as I'm defining it, you're talking about the nature of truth, what it
Yeah.
means fundamentally for
Yeah.
things to be true.
Okay. I
Those
get
are
it. I
all
get it.
metaphysical.
No, so okay, sorry. I'm like I like haven't basically eaten, so I'm like a little bit delirious right now. But uh I remember what my point was. So my point is that when you're saying I have a proposition and that proposition refers to either the existence of God or the non-existence of God, okay? um, we're back at the original objection, which was you're bifurcating logical space in half, and there's just no reason in the syntactic representation of this argument why that only holds for the God example. Let me give you an identical argument, okay? Logically, like provably identical, okay? So if I make a proposition, then it must refer to a metaphysical worldview. If it refers to a metaphysical worldview, it's either saying that Platonism is true or Platonism is false. Okay, it's saying one of those two things. Therefore, whenever I make a proposition, I'm saying whether or not Platonism is true or whether or not Platonism is false. Okay, and
Did
I
I
could
not
do this.
ex oh
I
go
could
ahead.
do this. I could do this for everything. But the thing is that the issue is that an implication of your view is that it's impossible to be agnostic about any metaphysical position whatsoever. And that kind of consequence is incredibly strong to the point where I think it warrants a certain degree of resistance.
Okay. Haven't I made it clear to you how I'm defining metaphysics in this conversation? Like every
Yeah,
time I've said metaphysics in this conversation, I said as it's been defined in the context of this conversation.
yeah. I
Haven't I
mean,
made that clear to you?
yeah. You
Every
use
single time I invoke that word?
no. You're using idiosyncratic ad hoc for the purpose definition of metaphysics in order to get around the objection.
No, it's just the fact that I'm tokenizing a concept in a way that's not controversial, and this
Can
would
you
be
define how it's
included
not controversial? Are there any
because
other
this is
serious
in the
academic?
category. I'm just being more restrictive with how I'm defining metaphysics, but these are in the
Right,
category of metaphysics.
right. Are there
Okay,
any
so
other
that's
professional
it.
philosophers that do that? Is there any
That's
other profession?
irrelevant. That's irrelevant.
Okay,
Because
I'm just saying. As long
I
as you
could
agree
call
that
it
no
I could
academic
call
does
it
this.
it doesn't matter what any other academic does because all I'm talking about is a concept and I'm referring to it with relevant terms. And I've made clear how I'm defining the term. It doesn't matter what I tokenize it as. Okay, it doesn't matter. It's irrelevant.
Okay,
I could call it XYZ. Everyone has an XYZ. Like it doesn't matter what I'm calling it.
right. Okay, let me
Okay?
just go to another point
So
then.
do you
That
have a
that
rebuttal to what I'm telling you?
yeah, I do, and if you'd let
Let's
me
hear
get
it.
to it.
I'm waiting. I'm excited.
First of all, I think that I have my own independent argument that I haven't even given yet. But I think, for instance, after having some conversation with some other people, I realized I should have brought this up. But why do you think modal realism is false?
I don't know all the implications of modal realism.
Oh, but no,
But
but you
you
said you prima facie know that it's false.
well, if it entails things, if it entails that there is no God, that's what I'm
It
telling you.
doesn't.
Like if it entails that
It
there is no
doesn't.
God,
It doesn't.
well,
It
what does
doesn't.
it
But it's an
entail about the
alternative
nature? What
metaphysical
does it
worldview.
entail? What does it entail about the nature of truth and
The
falsity and
truths are
so on and so
grounded
forth?
in the truths of contingent and counterfactual statements are grounded in possible worlds.
What does that mean?
Uh, Go read a book about it. I mean, like,
Okay, well, I
it
mean,
means
look, the point is that if
seems
it's
like a
not
you problem.
God as he's been defined, well, no, I'm just telling you, if it's not God as I've defined him, as that which is ultimate, a mind that's revelatory, personal, omniscient, omnipotent, etc. If it's not that, then then I'm denying it. Okay.
Right. No. So, but
Now,
what I'm
again,
saying is,
none of this is a principal objection to my argument because my argument doesn't hinge upon you having an informed objection. to every proposition. That's its negation. Not saying that I don't have an informed objection, but granting that even if I did, it would not help in your case against agnosticism, because my argument for agnosticism does not hinge upon the person having a due diligence or an informed objection to every other worldview. It
You're
just
misrepresenting my
entails.
argument. You're misrepresenting my arguments,
Okay, well,
which is
this well,
convenient.
well, hold on a minute. I thought you were responding to my argument. So what I'm doing is responding to you as though you're responding to my argument.
No, but
Bottom
like you're
line is, whatever
misrepresenting
you're
my
saying right now,
arguments.
whatever you're saying right now, it does not address my argument. It does not refute my argument. It does not refute the
I
conclusion.
mean, it's very okay.
Okay?
You're entitled to your opinions, but I mean, you're
Well,
not
you still
entitled.
haven't given a rebuttal. Like everything you've done is like some sort of like sideline issue. Like your scales talking about whether or not God exists. Like what does that have to do with whether or not you're agnostic?
Because I'm
Are you
not
just
sure if
talking
you've
about things
ever,
that are
I'm not sure if you've
counterintuitive
ever
to you?
been in a philosophy class or actually had to do philosophy in your life before. But when it happens is that you make particular claims, you make conditionals, you make statements that are well-formed formulas, and it's completely within the jurisdiction of the person that is questioning you to make any statements accordingly.
Okay. That has nothing to do with what we're talking about.
It did.
You
It
understand
did.
that?
It's just you're very allergic to progress.
No, what I'm allergic to is people evading and not answering questions that I've asked them.
Okay, chat. Am I evading?
I don't really care what Chad has to say. Like you can present your actual rebuttal to what I'm saying, and instead of appealing to Chat, because Chat can think whatever they want to think. If you haven't presented your rebuttal and you haven't made it clear to me, okay, then I'm going to say what I understand our conversation to be, which is that you haven't been clear in refuting my position. You've only given irrelevant things that like irrelevant topics. So you can't be agnostic because, or
I
you
don't
can
think
be
I can.
agnostic because.
Yeah, I think you got your script wrong. I can be agnostic because of considerations with respect to epistemic pure disagreement.
Roger, I'm waiting to hear a refutation of my argument.
Yeah, and you're okay. So I'm giving you. There's an argument from epistemic pure disagreement that's rooted in the notion of conciliation theory, whereby it's established that in cases
Okay,
of pure
Roger.
disagreement, withholding judgment is the most correct thing to do, and this is borne out again and again.
Okay.
I'm like standing in the rain in like
What
bare
I'm
feet
not
right now
going
for
to
you.
do, what we're not going to do is just throw out nomenclature. The most sophisticated word I've used here is like metaphysic, and I've
I mean,
explained
maybe
what
you
I
don't
mean
know
by
any
that.
more sophisticated
Okay.
words.
No, the point is that you don't need to use sophisticated language. The point is that you're just doing that as a tactic, right, to just cloud the issue, right? What I want to know from you is in plain English. I mean, what you told me, what I understood is that you're just telling me it's the most righteous thing to do. It's the most virtuous
When
thing
did
to
I
do
say?
to be
When did I say
agnostic.
righteous?
Like virtuous. I'm paraphrasing what you're
When did
saying.
I
I'm
say
paraphrasing
righteous?
my understanding. You
When
didn't
did
say
I say
righteous. You didn't
righteous?
say the
I
word
didn't. Okay,
righteous.
so you were wrong. All right, fine.
No, but I made it clear that I'm just it's a representation
Paraphrasing
of
me
what you're saying.
inaccurately. Paraphrasing me inaccurately.
But didn't you say it's the best option? It's the best thing to be agnostic. Isn't that the tail end of what you were saying?
It's the most reasonable thing.
Right. The reason. Okay, that's right. The most reasonable thing. Okay. The fact that it might be the most reasonable thing to do doesn't mean that it is something you can do. Okay.
Oh well, I
The fact that you
just
may
did it,
consider it
so
the most
obviously
reasonable. The fact
it's
that you think it's
logically
the most
possible for
reasonable
me to
thing.
do it.
No, the fact that you may consider it the most reasonable thing to do doesn't mean that you can act like in actuality you can do it. Okay. So let's be clear here. All right. What I want to hear is a rebuttal. Okay. I'll give the argument again. You can tell me either
Yeah,
if the
sure.
premises don't follow or whatever, or if the premises are wrong. Okay. If you are predicating, you're invoking a metaphysic. People are predicating, therefore they're invoking metaphysics. Okay. If you're invoking a metaphysic, you're gonna then metaphysic as it's been defined here, you're gonna be speaking as to whether or not God exists. All right. They're invoking a metaphysic, therefore they're speaking about whether or not God exists. So where is the faultiness in this argument?
The faultiness is there's no meaningful distinction between metaphysical claims and non-claims with respect to bivalence.
That's not my. I never made the claim that there's any difference in the bivalence of metaphysical or
Oh,
non-metaphysical
but then
claims.
that's a problem, because then I could be
No, it's not.
agnostic about everything, even non-metaphysical issues.
No, I'm surprised you're not understanding this, Roger.
I'm
If
surprised
you're
you're not
invoking, if
me.
you are, maybe you need to write this down, Roger. You haven't eaten, so maybe you need to eat and write this down. Okay.
Maybe you need to read a book.
If you're affirming a proposition, Roger, if you're affirming a proposition, are you not affirming or let's say this. If you're affirming something, right? Let's say you're affirming a proposition X, right? You can either affirm proposition X or not X, right? Like for example, if I was affirming the color of the grass, I could either say that the grass is green, or I'm going to be invoking a proposition that entails that the grass is not green, correct? Those are the only two things I could be saying with respect to the color of the grass, correct?
Sure.
Okay. Now, if somebody is invoking a metaphysic, and metaphysic as has been defined by me, okay, then they're either going to be saying that God does exist, or they're going to be saying something by implication that God does not exist. Do you agree with that?
Do I agree with that?
Mm-hmm. I thought they were equivalent.
Again, sorry, I'm also like doing 90 million things at once. Look, I'm just going to reiterate the kind of argument that I was making.
Why don't you just answer the question?
Could you repeat the question, please?
Okay. In the same way that if I'm affirming a proposition with respect to the color of the grass, that proposition is either going to entail that the grass is green or that the grass is not green. If I am invoking a proposition about metaphysics as it's been defined in this conversation, I'll either be the proposition will either entail that God does exist or that God does not exist, correct? If I am doing so, if I'm invoking a metaphysic.
Okay, sure.
Okay. Premise 2, the person is invoking a metaphysic by implication or explicitly. Therefore, they are affirming a proposition as to whether or not God does or does not exist. So the only thing you could reject now is premise 2. Okay, this is basic modus ponens. Okay, I formulated in like so many different ways to try to make it clear, but this should be the most simple way to put it. Okay, if somebody is affirming a metaphysic, then they're affirming something about whether or not God exists. You already accepted that. Then the only thing you could deny is that they are affirming a metaphysic, and metaphysics has been defined in this conversation. Do you want to object to that?
Yeah, I want to make the argument that I actually am intending on making. So this is the
Okay,
argument.
wait, hold on a minute. Hold on.
Okay,
Do you
whatever.
object to premise 2?
Jeff, I'm not gonna. It's just.
You've been pinned down, Roger, like so many times.
I have. Roger, you couldn't pin me down if you had the entire Russian army.
My name's not Roger.
Or Jrobin or whatever.
That's your name. Your name's Roger. Okay.
No, but the point is that you couldn't. This is not.
So do you have like a rebuttal?
Yeah. Okay, I have a rebuttal.
So how is premise 2 false?
All right, hey, look.
This is getting
ridiculous. Here's the deal, Jay. I said I was going to step in. I'm sorry. You're going to make me step in. The guy, look, give him a chance to respond. And you're going to stop over talking him. And you're going to stop being a bully, or he doesn't want to continue. All right. So
I thought Roger was slapping everyone around. How am I being a bully?
Well, I think it's pretty evident for everyone to see.
Okay. Well, Roger, why don't you substantiate your thing?
Jay, you said what you need to say. I'm going to give you 10 seconds. You give me the question to Roger, and then Roger's going to have a chance to answer.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you accept modus ponens. That's taken as a given. Okay.
Yeah, sure. Fine.
So that's P therefore Q.
What's the P therefore Q?
P then Q, P therefore Q. Okay.
Okay, sure.
P then Q. You already accepted.
No, but
if I'm affirming a metaphysic.
What's the P and the Q?
I'm telling it to you. I'm telling it to you.
Sure.
If I'm affirming a metaphysic, or if anyone affirms a metaphysic, that means they are affirming a position as to whether or not God exists. They are affirming a metaphysic, either implicitly or explicitly. Okay, I'll add that to the first premise. If there's somebody's affirming a metaphysic, either implicitly or explicitly, then they're affirming a position as to whether or not God exists, or they're affirming a proposition as to whether or not God exists. They are affirming a metaphysic, either implicitly or explicitly. Therefore, they're affirming a proposition as to whether or not God exists, meaning that they're not neutral or they're not agnostic.
Okay.
So you accepted premise 1 already, so that's a given. So
Jay,
substantiate the falsity of premise 2.
This is just very
Jay?
caustic. I have
Well,
replies, but if it's
Okay.
going to be this badgering, then
No,
it's
this now. No, Roger, you have time to respond. Jay is going to
okay.
respond.
Yeah. So this is my worry with this kind of argument, and the argument, and I generally tend to take these kinds of arguments, is more indirect in nature. I'm not sure if it's going to satisfy everyone, but I'll by all means go ahead and do this, and then I'm going to make some additional points. The first point is that it seems like whenever I make any kind of proposition whatsoever, I don't know why we're limiting it to just metaphysical propositions. Whenever we make any proposition whatever, it seems as though that presupposes some kind of theory of truth, let's say, because propositions admit of truth or falsity. So when I say the car is on the road, right, I'm either doing a correspondence theory, a coherence theory, a quietist theory, um, or some other kind of theory of truth, right? There are a panoply of different options that I can choose from. And so it seems to me, from what you're sort of saying, is that a consequence of your view is I can't be agnostic about any metaphysical position, whatever. And that just seems like a very serious consequence of the view that just seems very implausible. I mean, it's de rigueur within academic philosophy that people are agnostic about positions that they haven't investigated fully independently, and the idea that I could just know my position and not have to investigate somebody else's position, and therefore um, I'm within my rights to believe it is I think not advisable. And I'm just sorry. I'm getting inundated with messages right now. I'm getting a little bit stressed. But the idea is that you have to distinguish between what's entailed on a view versus what the person believes, what is believed by the person who holds the view. So, for example, like math has a lot of entailments, for instance, that we don't know about. Okay, so yeah, I know this position. So the idea is to say, well, look, like it could be the case that my positions, for instance, um, entail certain things. So, for instance, it could be that based off of the arithmetic commitments that I have to believe in like certain conjectures, or I have to believe in Fermat's last theorem or whatnot. But before Fermat's last theorem was proven, even though it was still an entailment of certain facts about geometry and whatnot, it's not the case that they knew that Fermat's last theorem was true. They could still withhold judgment, and they could withhold judgment because the facts didn't necessarily come in yet in the way that was expected. And I don't mean to yell at the people in chat, but I can't respond to like 19 different people giving me argument tips. So I'm just going to debate the way that I want to. The point is, from what I'm trying to say, they could have separate debates with you if they'd like to. The point that I'm trying to say is that there's this additional argument that I think defeats your argument, which is the argument from conciliation with respect to pure disagreement. And let me lay that out. So, in the epistemology of pure disagreement, there's generally a phenomenon where two people that are of cognitive and evidential parity get into a disagreement with one another. They observe a particular phenomenon. So, let's say they're watching a horse race, and you think horse A won, and think horse B won. We have the same exact eyesight. We are sitting right next to each other. We have all the same evidence, all the same facts. Okay. Now, in this kind of situation, the fact that you think that horse won is evidence of the fact that I might be wrong. But the fact that I think that this horse won is evidence of the fact that you might be wrong. Okay. And so in these kinds of instances, epistemically speaking, it's a very viable position to say, we should just suspend judgment about who's right in this kind of situation because we have this higher order evidence. Now, generally speaking, and this is a very serious view in the academic literature, when we come across instances of pure disagreement, so I'm listening to the atheist, they're making some arguments. I'm listening to the theist, they're making some arguments. I think both are persuasive. And because they symmetrically pull in opposite directions and they're epistemic peers with one another, absent some ultimate adjudicating, like instant replay thing, which we don't have in a lot of cases in philosophical arguments, the most rational position is to split the difference, a la David Christensen in his paper in 2007. This is something that is very common in academic epistemology. You could hold to a steadfast position, although there are issues with steadfastness because it could very much easily lead to dogmatism. And what I'm basically saying is that I think that agnosticism is a viable position because I could come to it through the conciliation argument for pure disagreement. I know that you were incurious about this argument previously, but I'm curious to see if you have any reply to The argument that I put hitherto, I felt as though I dealt with your argument previously. I mean, you abandoned 17 arguments, all of which I refuted, to then rely on this new one that seems to just collapse back into an old problem. If you want to shout loudly in order to compensate for the fact that your points are philosophically vacuous, then go ahead and do so. But I think that people see what you're doing.
Okay, so yeah, none of that was a response to what I asked you. None of that was a response to the question. And no, you have not ever um, refuted the position that you can't be neutral, that you're not going to you're not going to be affirming a proposition as to whether or not God exists. That is what I'm taking neutrality to mean, that you're neither affirming nor denying a proposition. And that would be the case because you are actively holding, everyone is who's predicating, they're going to be holding to some sort of model of reality, some sort of metaphysical framework as it's been defined here. And if that's the case, then it's just going to entail either that God does exist, or in virtue of the one that they do hold to, now this is not God, which would be the case that God does not exist in their paradigm. Okay, their claims to agnosticism, however, um, you know, practical they may want to say that it is in this context, however reasonable they may want to say it is in this context, that is irrelevant. Okay, their agnosticism is not tenable when it is being put in the context that it should be in, which is that
Okay.
we're talking about it in
Okay.
the frame of the fact that you're invoking facts about XYZ.
Okay.
Okay,
But let me
so
just.
let me put forward the modus ponens again. Okay, because you didn't respond to it, but you did accept it as valid. So P therefore Q, or P then Q, P therefore Q. Okay, so P then Q would be if somebody is invoking a metaphysic, okay, implicitly or explicitly, then they're going to be invoking a proposition as to whether or not God exists. Okay, you accepted this already. Unless you want to go back on this, I'd be more than happy to substantiate that. And then premise two is that people are either implicitly or explicitly invoking a metaphysic when they predicate, when they think about things, when they operate within the world, making judgments about things, weighing certain conclusions and outcomes with their effects or with their causes and so on and so forth. People are undoubtedly invoking a metaphysic in their day-to-day life. So then it would then necessarily follow from those two premises that they are affirming a proposition, either implicitly, of course, or explicitly, as to whether or not God exists. So
Okay.
neutrality
You're.
on this
Okay.
issue
Okay. This
is
is.
not possible.
Here's the thing. No. No.
So do you deny
Oh,
premise two?
Christ. Look. Let me just launch the argument that I have against this argument, and then we could address it because I have an
Okay, can you
argument
can you
against this
answer the
argument.
question, please? Can you answer the question, please? Do you deny premise two?
Yeah, just answer the question. That's fair enough. Just answer his question and then unpack
The
it.
second premise is that they hold a metaphysical worldview. No, I don't deny that.
Okay, and
Now
earlier
he
you
gets to
accepted
he gets
premise
to no
one.
no no Jay, he gets to unpack
Well,
now.
I want to make sure the argument is clear. Earlier, you accepted premise one, which is that if somebody is affirming a metaphysic, then
You just asked your question.
they're going to be affirming a proposition as to whether or not God exists. You accepted our do you still accept that, or do you want to recant on that? Do you want to backpedal?
Jay,
Uh,
Jay, I said I was going to step in. You had asked your question. I pressed him to answer your question because I felt it was a fair question. I advocated for you. Okay? And now I told him before I asked him to unpack it, I said it's an answer and then you can unpack it. You didn't let him unpack it. He said yes, and then you just started over talking again. So I'm going to give him the chance now to go ahead and unpack his answer to the
okay.
second
Yeah.
premise.
So let me just go
There.
through it. Okay.
Well,
Thank
can
you.
I make a comment to you, Jeff, really quickly? Just a really quick comment.
Uh.
Um, this is not going to be fast, but if the argument, if it's valid, right, and it's sound, this just means the conclusion would necessarily follow from the premises. So, I mean, what argument could he give that would falsify this? That would be relevant to the topic, right? Because Roger's not bringing up anything that's relevant to the topic at hand. He's talking about people's, what they want to admit
Jay,
with reference to
Jay,
their beliefs
Jay,
and
Jay,
whatnot. That's not what I'm talking
Jay,
about. I'm not
Jay,
talking about that.
Jay,
So it's not
Jay.
relevant
Okay, Jay, how do you let him
because I heard him.
unpack it?
I heard him just now talking about it.
Jay,
Conciliatory agree. I don't even know what he
Jay,
said,
Jay,
but he's
yeah.
talking about agreement and disagreement
Jay,
and whether or not it's
Jay, you
reasonable,
seem
right?
triggered, Jay. You seem very triggered, Jay.
I'm not triggered. Actually, he's already given me everything you need, right? He's and now conceded
Jay,
that Q
Jay.
is just necessarily, it just follows necessarily
Oh,
from the
this
premises.
I
you're
don't. Do I have to send you down? I mean, really? Do you
No.
want to have the conversation? Then would you
Yes.
please? Okay.
Okay.
Look. Look. Come on now, please.
okay.
I
Basically,
right or thank you.
okay. So basically, this is sort of the kind of counter argument that I'm going to be giving to what you've been saying hitherto, which is that just because they have a metaphysical worldview that entails either the truth or the falsity of that particular belief doesn't mean that we know all of the results of our entailments. Okay, this seems to be the critical move in your argument. That's sort of an implicit premise, and the implicit premise is what I'm objecting to. Okay, so it's still a
No,
premise.
I never said anything about knowledge or anything like that.
Yeah, but it's an implicit premise in the argument.
No, I'm actually rejecting anything about knowledge in this thing. I don't believe that
Okay, so
atheists
then
know that
yeah,
God doesn't exist, for
so
example. So
okay,
I'm not saying anything about
so
knowledge.
I could not know whether or not God exists then. So it has nothing to do
No, I'm
with
not
knowledge.
talking about knowledge here. I'm not talking about knowledge. I'm talking about
Right.
what the propositions you
Yeah.
affirm
Right, but
entail. That's all I'm talking
agnosticism
about.
is
That's all my
about
argument is
knowledge.
about.
Agnosticism is about knowledge. Yes or
Okay,
no?
fine. I'm not going to use the term agnosticism if that's what makes you happy. All I'm talking about is whether or not you can be
Okay.
neutral towards God's existence. And neutrality just means that you're not affirming a proposition either
Do I have
implicitly
to
or
know some?
explicitly as to whether or not God
Do I
exists.
have to know something in order to be either neutral or not neutral towards it?
No, I don't think they're mutually inclusive.
Okay, no. What I'm trying to say, in like however many words, is basically that you have this idea that I could be committed to some metaphysical position. That metaphysical position either entails that God exists or God does not exist. But the thing is that I could just not know that. I could just be agnostic about that very fact, and then there's no issue here. I mean, yeah, sure, it's a bivalent structure, but why does the fact that why does a bivalent structure logically compel me to affirm one of the disjuncts?
Well, that has nothing to do with my argument. My argument simply
Yes, it
says that
does.
whenever you're
Yes, it
operating in no,
does.
I'm not talking about knowledge here, right? All I'm talking about is whether or not the what you do affirm entails that God exists or entails that God does not exist. And I'm going to hold people now that when they are made, been made clear to them that they're not agnostic, then I'm going to hold them to their standard. I'm going to hold them to what they do believe, and they should have an account for it. If they don't have an account for it, then that's a different conversation.
Okay,
But
so
all my argument here addresses is the implications, right, and the entailments of what people say, what
yeah,
people do.
okay, Jay, listen. Okay, is it possible that your mathematical beliefs entail that the Fermat's last theorem is true, or that the Goldberg conjecture is true?
Okay, whatever that is, sure.
Okay, therefore you must know that the Goldberg conjecture is true, right?
I didn't say anything about knowledge. No.
Okay, yeah, exactly. You didn't say anything about knowledge, then I could hold on to agnosticism because we're not talking about knowledge, and agnosticism is about knowledge.
Okay, well, I told you I'm not going to use the word agnosticism because that triggers you. So I'm just going to talk about neutrality
No,
towards
because
God
the
and all
whole
neutrality
debate was
and all
about
neutrality and all neutrality
You're
and all
shifting the
neutrality refers
subject.
to. So I
You're
defined. By the
shifting
way,
the
I
subject.
defined. So hold on a minute. I did
Jay,
define
you're
how I'm using the
yelling,
term
man. Man,
agnosticism.
your mic is so loud, dude. You're like
All right.
yelling,
Well,
man.
I
You're
have a really
so
good mic. That's
loud.
why I
J.
have a
Robin,
really good
Yeah,
okay,
but
mic.
why don't you
But
it's
use
look,
it to say
breaking up and
something?
it's distorting.
it's a
God.
headset. It's a headset. Okay, and it's a good quality mic. That's why. Okay,
Just
but look,
use it
Okay,
to
this is the
say
point.
something useful.
just
This
take
is
a
the
breath.
point.
Just take a breath.
Jay,
This is the
Robin,
point.
Robin, this is the point. I nailed it, right? So when I said then I could hold on to my agnosticism. You said, well, then let's not talk about agnosticism. But remember, the whole topic at issue, the whole question at issue, the whole subject that we're talking about, everything that this is turning around is whether or not agnosticism is a possible position. And then when I pushed and I pushed and I pushed, and you said that the entailments of my beliefs are not necessarily something that I know, even though those beliefs are entailments, you said, well, I don't want to talk about agnosticism anymore. So when it's convenient for your argument to move away from the subject, you do so. And when it isn't convenient, you do something else. And so it's
Okay.
just sort of like, don't act like you're being an honest interlocutor when in reality, you've been pinned in a corner and you're lashing out now.
All right. So I never mentioned knowledge here, right? When I use the term agnosticism, I'm very clear as to what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the fact that they're neutral towards God. If you've listened to any of my conversations, right, most of the time, right, I'm going to say that neutrality towards God is not something that you can hold to, right? I'll say you can't be neutral towards God. Sometimes I use the word agnosticism, but it's in a context where it should be understood that I'm conflating I'm like conflating those two terms to mean the same thing here,
Okay,
right?
okay. So
So hold on a minute. That was clear from the onset of the conversation, right? Because I was making it clear that you're not neutral towards God. I probably use the word neutral more than I've used the word agnosticism in this conversation,
but
right?
the topic
Because
is
the
not
claim I'm making here,
talking. Okay.
the claim I'm making here is that you're not neutral towards God.
No,
And
no,
by
no. We are
that,
talking about
and
agnosticism.
all the
We are
argument
talking about
addresses,
agnosticism.
listen,
We are talking about agnosticism. Okay.
Roger, all the argument is supposed to address is whether or not you're saying something about God implicitly or explicitly. Knowledge factors here, what you claim to know here is not relevant. All I'm saying is
Okay.
that you are saying either
Question.
explicitly or
Question.
implicitly that
Question.
God exists. That's
Question.
all I'm
So
saying. That's all
even
the
if I
argument
have that
addresses.
entailment, even if those entailments hold, I could still not know whether or not God exists. Yes or no?
No, I'm not saying that you can't know. I'm not saying
Yes or
that
no?
you don't know
Yes
whether
or
or not
no?
God exists.
Yes or no?
Wait, repeat the question. Let me make sure I understand the question
Okay, yeah,
clearly.
you really better write it down. So here's the point.
Yeah.
Even if I know all the entailments of my beliefs, or like, oh no, not if I know, even if it is an entailment of my belief, it's not
Mhm.
necessarily true that I know the entailment of my belief, correct?
Or believe.
Or
Know the
belief.
entailment of your belief?
Yeah,
Sure.
Or believe.
sure. Okay, fine. Then QED, I've been proven right. I mean, there's nothing further to say then. That's just
No, because all the argument says is that
QED.
you're entailing. All the argument says is that irrespective of what you want to admit or believe, is that your position is going to commit you logically to one of two positions as to whether or not God exists. That's all the argument here is addressed. Is supposed to address here. So I never made a claim about belief. In fact, the premises themselves don't say anything about belief, which should let you know everything you need to know, because all it addresses is what the propositions you do affirm entail. Did I ever say anything in these premises about belief or knowledge or anything like that? Did I ever say anything about that?
No, but you should have, because we're
Okay,
talking about
no, no,
agnosticism.
don't tell me what I should have done. Don't tell me what I should have
No, I
done.
will tell you.
That's
I
not
will tell
included in
you.
the premises. That's not included in the premises. That's not my argument.
Right. So it
So
doesn't
instead of
help.
misrepresenting my argument, instead
Yeah,
of
your argument
complaining
didn't do what
about
it's supposed to do.
instead of complaining about, people being dishonest, why don't you take a look in the mirror, accurately represent what I'm telling you, and if you have a rebuttal, give the rebuttal.
Okay,
Now it
yeah.
seems like you understand, you accept my argument.
I mean,
So your position,
did I give a rebuttal? Did I give a rebuttal?
no, you didn't.
I mean,
Not one that actually like refuted the position. If by rebuttal you're saying that you actually gave a sound
I
refutation of my
gave. Hang
position.
on,
No, you didn't.
Jay. I gave an argument, the conclusion of which agnosticism is still possible. Okay,
Did I say anything about knowledge in the premises here?
you should have, because the whole
Okay,
discussion's about
that's not an answer to the
agnosticism.
question. Did I say anything about knowledge in the premises? Yes or no?
No, and that's a bad thing.
Good. All right, good. So do you have a refutation for my argument?
Your argument doesn't prove what you need to prove.
Okay, don't tell me what I need to do and don't tell me what I should do.
No,
Does your
I am
argument
going to tell you because
does
you're
your
in my
argument
room.
does your argument falsify my argument? Yes or no?
Yes, it does.
Okay,
Yeah.
so does it
Hey guys.
so
Hey,
how does
look.
it
Hey, this has
falsify that you're
devolved
going to
into
be
a
making a
shouting
statement about
match. This has
Yeah, so
devolved into a
he
shouting
hasn't
match.
actually he's
Hang on.
just giving me like irrelevant points, right? He's just bringing up
Hang on.
irrelevant things and
All right.
not
Hang
relevant
on.
to what I'm
Hang on.
saying.
Hang on. Everybody take a breath. It's devolved into it's devolved into a shouting match, and that's not what we want here.
Yeah, I
I
don't like
think
that.
I think everybody's a little frustrated, and may I suggest that I said you're probably both really tired, and we all appreciate it. Maybe it would be a good time, but let's just call this a day, and to maybe agree to meet again another time, and continue the discussion, because this has been enjoyable, but it doesn't need to devolve into a shouting match where you're both
I
getting
agree.
upset.
Look, did
And
I ever
please,
ask him what he knew? Did I ever ask him what he knew? Did I ever ask him that? No, I didn't. So he's not addressing my
really?
argument, right?
Jay,
Hey,
after
hey,
everything I've
if you
just
guys are
said,
at a dead end, I'd be happy to talk to Jrobin for a few minutes.
No, I'm not interested in doing that right now.
No, I mean,
Okay.
I'm willing. I'm
Well,
willing to.
can I make a can I say something?
Yeah,
So
sure.
wow.
I think I understand what Roger's getting at, because it sounds like Roger's expecting an argument for agnosticism, and it sounds like the argument at hand doesn't conclude that, or sorry, an argument that agnosticism is impossible. It sounds like it doesn't have that conclusion. It sounds like the conclusion was about whether it's the case that God exists or not. Am I misunderstanding the argument there?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
so what is the argument?
The argument is that when people affirm propositions, they're going to be committed logically to the position that God exists or that God does not exist, irrespective of what they want to believe or admit or what they want to realize about themselves or about their position.
Yeah.
They're going to be logically committed to one of two positions, which is that either God does exist or that God does not exist. So in that sense, there is no neutrality towards God because you're going to be committed one way or the other to whether or not God does or does not exist.
Right,
Yeah,
but
All
I
right,
think
hang
I
on.
I just
think
mean
I
in
think
the,
the good
sorry, just
point.
one
I
sec,
think the good point
one
that
sec,
Roger made, though.
just one sec.
Well,
So
Hang
so
on,
let's
hang on,
let
guys. Point of
wait,
moderation. Point of moderation. Stop. Stop. Everybody stop. Everybody stop. Everybody stop. All right. Roger, did you invite any of these people off upstage?
I didn't invite Biscuit.
Did you invite Rico or Ask Yourself?
I think I accidentally clicked the one for Ask Yourself. I didn't invite Rico or Biscuit.
Okay, so I had suggested that we kind of move forward because I know both of you are tired, and I invited Biscuit because I thought you, Roger, had maybe invited one of the other two guys because I thought you wanted to open the room up, and so
But
just
yeah,
and it's up to both of you, Jay and Roger, of what we do here.
yeah.
I think that would be a good time to open the room up a little
Sure.
bit, and
Sure.
let's
Let's
yeah,
let's
I'd like to
yeah, sure.
complete my
Ask
point.
yourself.
Is
Go
that
ahead.
okay?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Fine.
Yeah.
How
So
does being
just
committed to a
some.
position not require epistemic commitment,
Wait,
Jrobin?
yo, come on.
hang on, Sean.
So
Hang on,
yeah,
Sean.
thanks. Um, yeah. So I just want you gave it in premise conclusion form, and that's kind of what I was interested in. What was the exact conclusion of the argument?
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
That the person will either implicitly or explicitly be affirming a proposition as to with reference to whether or not God exists.
Okay, and this is, I think, Roger's point. Does affirm there mean believe, or does it mean that it's entailed by things that they believe?
It's entailed. That's what I'm talking about.
Right.
Okay,
So then
bingo.
it, okay, can I wait just one second. So then it's not an argument for agnosticism, right? Because
Yeah.
it's simultaneously possible to have a view that entails that God exists and to not believe that God exists, right? So that's not
Okay.
showing
Did I
agnosticism.
talk about knowledge here or belief here or anything like that? Did I
The
ask did I ask what he knew?
debate's
Did I
about
ask him what he knew?
If
pertains to
if
knowledge.
it's supposed what sorry, if it's supposed to be an argument against agnosticism, then yes.
Okay.
If not,
Does the
then no.
conclusion say anything about agnosticism or knowledge or belief here at all?
Well,
No.
that's what I'm unclear about. It
Okay,
doesn't
the answer is
explicit.
no. So ask
Wait,
yourself. Like I already
okay,
said,
hang on.
I'm not
One
really
second.
interested in speaking with you.
Wait, you didn't hear
So
my point
Roger, is
though.
there anything else you want to say to
Wait,
conclude
wait.
before
Come
I
on.
head out?
That's not fair, really. I mean, look.
No, I'm
So
not
I
interested in
agree.
speaking to you. Every time, when I've heard your past interactions, it's not been, I wasn't very impressed at all, and I was
Okay,
actually quite
so
disappointed.
It didn't
Jay,
have to
if you're
be,
not
but
Jay, I'm gonna respectfully, if you're not interested in speaking with him anymore, just you could
well,
say bye and
wait.
leave, or I can remove you, or
I
I
can
Yeah,
don't
and
give.
know.
I'll
Okay.
leave. I just want to make sure I want to make sure Roger has said everything
But
he wants to say.
wait a second. I have a response to what you said though. So
Okay.
no, the conclusion doesn't explicitly say anything about agnosticism, and
This
I
is
don't
my
think the
point.
premise is
Yeah.
yeah. So just to be clear, is is what you're trying to establish that agnosticism is impossible or not? Because my point is that if that's what you're trying to establish, the argument does not establish that. That's my point.
Okay, Roger, is there anything else you'd like to say before
He's
I head
not
out?
answering the question. He's not
Answer the
answering the
question.
question.
That's right.
Well, I'll
That's
just
right. I
say
said
it.
I'm
I'll
not going to
just say
speak to
it.
him. I
No,
don't
no,
have to
because
speak to him if I don't want to.
Robin,
So agnosticism is
because
possible.
it shows
I'll
it
just
shows a
say it. Wait, let me
problem.
just say it. Because they'll hear me say it. Okay, thank you very much, guys. I appreciate whatever
Yeah,
support I've gotten.
and Roger, keep in mind this is Jrobin. You're just dealing with me secondhand anyway, because I supplied Roger with this point, right?
Well,
So
then if that's what he's going to do,
why
if
don't you
that's all
just
Roger has to say, then I'll just
interact
leave
with
right
me?
now. I'll say goodbye,
No,
and
I mean,
I'm
no,
not going to do
I
that.
was making this point
So I'm not doing that.
I don't
Yeah, so I'm not going to do the secondhand,
Yeah, you can run away
vicarious
again.
Yeah, well then
proxy
debate
kind
it
of thing. I'm not
firsthand.
doing that.
Debate it firsthand. I'm right here,
No, I'm not
right
interested
now.
in speaking to
Okay.
you right now. Not
Yeah.
right
So
now.
then,
No, no.
Jay
ask
Robin,
yourself.
Can
I'll
we
I'll
give you.
give
just
you
let Roger
one
speak
second.
for a
Yeah,
One
just let
second?
me
Can
second.
All
speak.
right.
Roger
So
just
Roger,
talk?
did you want to say
All right,
anything? Did
hang
you
on.
want to say anything before I head out?
I want to reply to what I
Well,
said.
you're not going to get a reply,
You're not going
unfortunately.
to get
So
a
Roger, is
reply.
there
Let
anything else you
Roger
want to say?
talk.
Wait a second. Let's just make sure that we're clear about what's being asked here, okay? I want to understand if it's an argument for agnosticism, right? Because
All right. I
if
think the answer to that is clear. I think the answer to that's
okay,
clear. So
what's the
Roger,
answer? Is that
do you
yes or
need
no? Hey, Jay
So
Robin,
Roger, is there
don't
anything
let
else
it
you want to
derail.
ask me
Wait,
or
Yeah,
say?
don't let him derail. Don't
yeah,
let
I
him
would.
do this. Is that a
Okay.
yes or a no? Jay Robin, was that a
Okay.
yes or a no
Roger,
vote
is there
about
anything else?
agnosticism?
Roger, I can't hear you. There's a lot of noise in the
Jay
background.
Robin,
Robin's
Roger,
mic is
Roger,
too
can you answer
loud.
the question, please?
sophistry. stop the sophistry. Listen.
All right, Roger, I
Just got
can't
a
hear
yes
you.
or
There's a lot
no.
of noise in the background. Can you?
J.
There's a lot of
Robin,
obstruction. Can we
stop
get a
the
little bit?
sophistry. J. Robin. Thank you. Is that a yes or a no? That's all I'm asking.
Roger, I can't hear you. Can you please repeat
J.
your answer?
Robin,
Jeff,
I
you
stop
can
couldn't
the
hear you.
stop being a
sophistry.
moderator.
That's a
Like, what's
yes
going
no
on?
question.
I don't.
It's
Okay,
a
hang
yes
on.
no question.
Sorry. I'm sorry. I'm gonna have to do this. Okay. Sorry about that. Ask yourself. I love you and I love your YouTube channel. I need to make the point independently.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna keep asking until I get kicked. Robin, answer the fucking question.
Oh,
Stop trying this
he's
suicide by mod bullshit. Every time someone who can actually debunk you shows up in the room, you flee like a little bitch. I'm here right now. I showed something about your argument, okay? I'm showing if it's an argument for agnosticism, which, as far as I understood it's supposed to be, it doesn't work, right? Because
So is
it's
Ask a mod
possible,
now? Can
sorry,
anybody?
because it's possible to
Yeah, I mean, I
simultaneously
was given
accept
mod
the
powers.
conclusion of the
He would be
argument.
gone right now if it was up
Sorry,
to me. But Roger, is there a question that you want to
Yeah,
answer,
well, there's a
or
point.
is there anything you want to say?
There's a point that I want to make. So the point that I'm trying to make here is the following: the argument that you've presented, as you've presented it in your most recent formulation, does not have as its conclusion that agnosticism is impossible, or that it's irrational. So, as an argument against agnosticism, it doesn't work. As an
Okay. Did I make
argument,
any claims to knowledge in my argument? Yes or no?
you did not, but you should have.
Okay. So do you have? Okay, don't tell me what I should have done. Do you have a refutation of my argument here?
I mean, I think that your argument is generally right, but I think it's trivial.
Good. All right. Good. Thank you very much. So
No,
you can't be neutral
that's not a
towards
win.
God.
But no. But
So you
that's not a
can't be
win.
neutral towards God. Oh well, that's my
No,
position, and that's what I came here to
no.
defend.
That's
You
not.
can't be neutral towards God.
That wasn't
So
the conclusion.
Roger, so Roger, which position are you? Are you in the God worldview or the not God worldview?
Okay, listen, J. Robin. I know that you have a really
God does not exist because.
Jeff. Am I alone?
Roger, God does not exist because.
Is this a conversation, or are you interested?
Yes.
No,
God does not exist because.
no. Oh, come on, Jay. Really?
Yes, really. So he knows now he doesn't. He can't escape this. So he knows his position entails the falsity of God. So there is no God because.
Jay, this looks so bad for you.
This looks bad for you.
Do you not see this? How bad this looks for you, Jay?
All right, Roger. There is no God because.
Jay, you're resorting to your script. Or come on now.
Could we just have a conversation?
Well, Roger has accepted now that his position entails that there is no God.
Jay,
I never said that.
Okay, so your position is going to entail either that God does exist or God does not exist. So which one is it?
No. Okay, listen to the specific.
Which one is it?
Jeff, this is not an interrogation. Okay, like I came up here to have an honest conversation about the argument.
Yeah, I suggested a few minutes ago that we kind of let this go. So I don't know. I think Roger, you're kind of at your end, and Jay, I don't know.
I'm willing to have
this,
but if I'm going to get yelled at, then I don't want that.
Yeah.
All right, so Roger, which position are you in here?
Let me just try to make my point, okay? And this is a point that I came to independently. This was not purely from Ask Yourself. I was getting inundated by like 17 different people. This is the point that I'm trying to make. As the argument stands, the formal argument in syntactic form, the conclusion of the argument does not say that agnosticism is irrational or that it's impossible. It does not say that. So as an argument for that conclusion, it is ineffective. The argument...
All right, so, Roger,
it's valid.
You're affirming a metaphysic. That metaphysic entails either that God does or does not exist. So what does your metaphysic entail?
Jay, you just
not exist?
Jay, you just started over talking Roger. He was talking. Please, Roger, you've continued, and then Jay, you can respond.
Okay, sure, thank you. Okay, so what I'm trying to say is that in order for you to have an argument that deductively ascertains the impossibility of agnosticism, I need, as a conclusion of that argument, the impossibility of agnosticism. All you've shown with this argument, which is, I think most people could agree to, it's trivial, is that if I form some metaphysical worldview, that has some bearing about whether or not God exists. But that doesn't, that's all that tells me. It doesn't tell me anything about whether or not agnosticism is irrational, unreasonable, not possible, and whatnot, because I could not know all of the entailments of my beliefs. For instance, you believe, let's say, for instance, in arithmetic and everything, okay? But there's surely some theorems within arithmetic that you have no previous acquaintanceship with, but your commitment to, I could run an identical argument. I could say, if you use arithmetic, then you are committed to a particular arithmetic system, then they're committed to like either this conjecture being true or this conjecture not being true. You are committed to arithmetic, therefore you're committed to that conjecture being true or it not being true. And then I could say, well, then you can't be agnostic about that conjecture. But no serious mathematician or philosopher of mathematician takes that seriously, because it's not necessarily the case that you know all the entailments of your belief. And agnosticism is about knowledge. Agnosticism is about knowledge. It is about whether or not we have enough credence to warrant knowledge about a particular proposition. The agnostic splits the difference and they throw their hands up and they say, I don't know. It's about knowledge, because the principal thing is to say, I don't know. And if you say, well, I don't care about agnosticism, then you just don't care about what the whole point of what this debate was about from the start. We came to this room, we had this discussion to discuss agnosticism. If you don't want to do that, if you want to bring up other things, if you want to go back to your script, if you want to self-destruct, you can do that in your own room, and that is perfectly within your purview. But the fact of the matter is, you presented me a formal argument that did not demonstrate the conclusion that you had set out to. And for those reasons, the argument is unsuccessful. I've produced counter arguments that you have not responded to. And for these reasons, in a debate context, it's very clear that if we were to score this, I would win. Sure, my sentences are long, but they're articulate and they're precise. And I'm excited to hear you yell at me now.
All right. So, Roger, you affirm metaphysics, correct?
I do.
Okay. Does that entail that God exists?
I don't know.
Okay. So by metaphysics, you're answering questions with reference to what the nature of truth is, what the nature of possibility and impossibility are, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? Correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, either the answer to that is that it's going to be fundamental in the mind, or that it's fundamental and not a mind, or that there is no fundamental basis to which question. I mean, the answer wouldn't even be an answer to that question, right? So, do you believe that what is fundamental, because you have an answer to this question, right? So it means you're affirming a proposition. Is the answer to that proposition that which is fundamental being a mind? Yes or no?
Is the answer to that which proposition?
What the nature of truth? You told me you have a position on your metaphysics. So is the nature of truth grounded in a fundamental mind? Yes or no?
Not in my view, no.
Okay, good. Then that would entail that there is no God, according
No,
to your
no, no,
position.
no. That would just entail that the truth isn't grounded in a mind.
Yeah, that's what God would be.
Okay, but
So
all I
your position
agree to is
entails
that
that there
truth
is
isn't
no God,
grounded in a
Roger.
mind.
Okay,
So
Roger.
I mean, pantheism can still
Roger.
be true, and God can be.
Roger. God is defined as that which is ultimate
Okay.
and a mind. Okay.
Sure.
So all of your bloviating, all of your pontificating has reduced down to this. The answer to the question, obviously, is no. So you exist as an individual who holds to the position that there is no God. So there is no God because
Look, I'm not gonna let the script go on,
This is
Jay. This is just
ridiculous.
it's
he doesn't have a
embarrassing.
rebuttal. Look at this. Look at this. Now he's self-destructing. So
Oh,
all of his
You
projecting
think
onto
I'm
me
oh
self-destructing?
my gosh.
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
yes I do.
This is
I'm not
Um,
self-destructing.
okay, fine.
yeah.
You can tell yourself that. So there is no God because
Yeah, I'll tell
Really?
myself, and I'll tell my PhD
that's
committee.
okay. Look,
I
all of your
enjoy
atheist friends
masturbating in
can
your
look.
basement,
That's okay. All right. Okay, that's okay. There's no God because.
guys.
So look, Roger, you don't have a rebuttal to
The
me.
debate is about agnosticism. The debate is
Yeah.
about the truth and possibility of agnosticism. You're going
Well,
back to a
I want
script.
to talk about knowledge here, right? I'm talking about neutrality towards God and what your position
Wait,
entails
neutrality
necessarily.
towards God entails that I have no knowledge either way. That's
No,
what
neutrality
neutrality
just means
is.
that no. Neutrality just I'm talking about it with reference to the fact that your position does or does not entail or does entail the falsity of God or the non-existence of God
Yeah, but I don't
or the existence
necessarily
of God.
know the
Okay.
entailments of my beliefs. We've been over
Well,
this.
you do know the entailments because you just told me the answer to the question is that what you hold is not a fundamental mind, but you do hold to something, right? So it's just not a mind. So it's just a falsity of God. So you do believe that there is
No,
no God.
no,
Your
no.
position is the case that there is no God.
No, again, let me reiterate the point that I made to you previously.
Okay, go ahead
The
and
argument,
reiterate it.
the modus ponens, the modus ponens that you engendered, okay, was P implies Q, P therefore Q. The Q is analogous to G or not G. So really, it should have been P implies G or not G, P therefore G or not G, right? So the only thing that you've concluded from your argument is that either it's the case that God exists or it's not the case that God exists. But
No,
that's just
no, no. That's
trivial.
not what I said.
Just
That's
trivial.
not my argument. That's not my argument. So
That's your
you just mischaracterized my argument.
I literally
My
read.
argument is
Jay,
that
quit
your
yelling. Quit
position.
yelling.
My
Jay, quit
argument.
yelling.
My
Quit
argument
yelling.
is that your position is going to entail the cause that God exists or does not exist. You are going to be affirming either implicitly or explicitly that God exists. And once that's been made aware, once you've been made aware of that, okay, I'll have some questions to ask you. Namely, God does not exist because. Now, your position is like there is no God. It implies that. That is the implication necessarily of your position. I just asked you, you just made it clear, you believe that whatever it is that's the source of all that is, can be, cannot be, it's not a fundamental mind. Now, you obviously know that because you say you have a metaphysical position. Okay? So, there is no God because.
That's not the topic of the debate.
All right, Roger, there's no God because.
Well,
So
This is not the
it's
topic.
yeah, Jay, I'm getting ready to boot you from the room if you don't stop off the script.
okay.
This
Well,
is
that's fine.
bad.
I can go to my own. I'll go to my own. I think we've had
It's up to
enough.
you, man. I mean, you want to,
Robin, listen. This is the point. This is
wow.
the point to make in closing and summarizing the kinds of arguments that I'm making is as follows. You presented an argument which is if I affirm a particular metaphysical worldview, then that metaphysical worldview says something about whether God exists or God does not exist. I hold to a particular worldview. Therefore, that worldview determines, has a particular position on whether God exists or God does not exist. I could not know the exact entailment that my worldview is committed to when you stretch out all the propositions that are entailed by my position. And because I could not know that, and it's logically possible for me to not know that, it is in fact logically possible for me to be agnostic, because agnostic is about a suspension of belief with respect to a knowledge claim. Okay?
Okay.
So this is preserved. In addition, you made no rebuttal to my argument from the epistemology of conciliation and pure disagreement. So if William Lane Craig was in this debate, that's accepted for the sake of argument because you had no reply. Okay? In addition to that, you presented like 17 arguments prior to the one that you did. Each of them failed. You acknowledged that, and now we're on this last
I didn't
one.
acknowledge that. So stop lying about what I'm telling you. I didn't present 17 different arguments. They all had the same conclusion, and they were all essentially the same thing. That somebody is going to be affirming a proposition, right? And that the proposition they're affirming is that either God does or does not exist. It's gonna be that proposition. It's not an issue of you refuting 100 different arguments, because I've only presented to you one main position, okay, one main argument, okay, which is that somebody's going to be holding a position. Now, maybe you might have had 17 different conversations going on in your head, which is fine. But my position and what I've articulated to you is that people are affirming a proposition. And if they're affirming a proposition, then they're going to be affirming at least propositions with respect to the metaphysic. Then they're going to be affirming that God does or does not exist. Okay.
Again, what do you mean by
Now,
affirm?
now, listen here.
Their
Listen here.
entailments affirm or they affirm? There's a difference.
They're going to be affirming. They're going to be affirming when they answer the question as to their metaphysical framework. The answer to the question as to whether or not, or what the foundational nature of reality is either going to be a mind or it's not going to be a mind. Okay. Now they're going to have a position, as you already told me.
No, they're not.
They're going to have a position.
They're going to have an.
Yes, they are. You just told me, and you accepted that is the case.
You're misrepresenting me. All I'm saying in this kind of instance is that when I hold to a particular belief, right? So, for instance, let's say I hold that arithmetic is true. It could very well be an entailment of that belief that Fermat's last theorem is true. Okay, but I don't know that Fermat's theorem is true. You actually have to, even if you have logical entailments in your belief within your mind, and something entails something else, in order to actually assent to that subsequent proposition, you have to go through and do the work in your head and actually see the eventual entailment. But the idea is that the agnostic is saying, look, I just don't see this kind of entailment, and until I do, and until it's definitively demonstrated to me, which hitherto it has not been, I'm within my epistemic rights to withhold judgment.
Okay, Roger, you have a metaphysic, correct?
Yes.
Okay. That by that we're saying that you have an answer to the questions as to the nature of truth, falsity, right?
Okay,
How it's distinct from each
no,
other.
let me play this game. Let me play this game.
You have an answer to those questions,
No.
correct?
You're running the script.
If not, then that's a different issue. But you
Okay.
do
Okay.
have an answer to those questions, correct?
No. Here's the
Oh,
point.
you don't. You
No,
don't.
not to the ones that you think that agnostics need to have an answer to. Let me just point this to you. Okay. Do you
Okay, so you
affirm
don't.
an
So then,
arithmetic?
so what does it mean for you to invoke truth? What does it mean for you to predicate, to make truth declarations, if you don't have access to what it means for things to be true?
I hold to a correspondence theory of truth, but this is not
Hold on a
at
minute.
all
Hold on
the
a minute.
debate
Hold
topic.
on. What's
This
the
is not at
wait, hold
all
on a
the
minute.
debate topic.
So I want you to unpack the correspond. Are you saying that truth is that which corresponds to reality? Is that your position?
Generally speaking, yes, but we're not debating the
Okay.
correspondence theory.
We're talking about the nature of reality. Okay. They're talking about the actuality of states of affairs, so that when propositions invoke them, okay, that they're intelligible. They're with reference to a broader, ultimate metaphysical context. So, do you have access to that context, or no?
Not the context that you attach to. I have a different context.
Okay. So then, what is it? So then, what does it mean for you to invoke propositions that reference states of affairs?
What does this have to do with
and
agnosticism?
predicates? Well, the point is that if you don't have an answer to that question, you're not actually meaningfully predicating.
No,
you're not actually. Well, you just wouldn't be predicating at that point, because it'd
look,
just be meaningless.
I
It would just be
deny.
meaningless utterances out of your mouth, right?
Okay, could you just let me make arguments? Okay, so the argument that I was going to make previously was the following. Look, I'm just going to do the dialectic for you because you're too impatient. So this is how it would have run if it ran successfully. So it would have been, Jrobin, do you affirm a particular view of arithmetic? Yes, I do. Okay, perfect. Is an entailment of that arithmetic the Goldberg conjecture? And then I would have been like, yes. So you affirm the existence of the Goldberg conjecture. You know that the Goldberg conjecture is true, or some other unknown conjecture that
I don't
hasn't
know
been
what the
discovered
Goldberg
by
conjecture is.
Exactly. So how could you affirm it? How could you affirm it? Like this is a consequence of your view. Is that I have to
No, not
know or
necessarily.
affirm? No. It's I have to affirm all the entailments of my beliefs.
For one, the fact that you may not know what the Goldberg conjecture is doesn't mean that you would be denying it. Okay? Because the Goldberg conjecture, whatever it is going to entail certain things. Okay?
Right.
And so if you already have in mind an answer to those entailments, then you would just be implicitly denying the Goldberg conjecture before you even knew what it is. Okay? That's the first thing. The second thing is that when we're talking about a metaphysical framework, we're talking about answers to certain questions. Okay? Now, everyone has an answer to these questions that they're predicating. You are predicating, okay? Because what it means to predicate is that you are actually invoking a reference point for states of affairs, the truths of the propositions that invoke them, right? You're talking about all of these concepts. You're talking about all of these things like relationships, possibilities, necessities. That's what you're talking about when you're invoking propositions and when you're thinking and when you're weighing certain outcomes in your head and making judgments about things. You're doing this every day, all the time. You're doing it right now, okay? If you're doing that, then you're going to be invoking a metaphysic. Okay, you're going to be invoking a model of reality under which those things will be intelligible, under which those things will be meaningful. Now, the answer to those questions will either be that there is an ultimate mind or that there isn't an ultimate mind, whatever that thing you have is. Okay? The bottom line is those are the only two answers to the question.
This collapses
So
objection.
so which of the two positions are you in here? Is it an ultimate mind that you believe is that, or is it not the case?
No, I don't know. I mean,
What do you mean you don't know? You
Look,
told me you have a position. You told me you have a position.
Listen, look, I have no interest in.
Okay, so what is it? What is it that's ultimate then?
Discourse.
If it that doesn't entail that either of these are the case, what is it that's ultimate?
Just listen to what I'm trying to say.
Hey, come on.
J-Rob, just listen to what I'm trying to say. What you just said is something that 40 minutes ago you rejected. So what you just said was, look, these are the only two options. It's a disjunction. It's exhaustive. Therefore, there can't be a middle position. You did just do that.
Okay, what is your ultimate framework? What is your metaphysical framework?
Okay, so
Roger?
You're not going to respond to him. Jeff, is there a point?
Roger, what is your metaphysical framework?
So Roger, are you done for the day?
No, I mean, if he's not going to answer what I'm going to be saying, then and he's just going to go back to his script, then
Because I asked you a question, you didn't answer it. You wanted to ask me questions, so I'm actually waiting for the answer to my question. What is your metaphysical framework
I'm a
that
Platonist.
doesn't entail either of these things?
I'm a
Okay,
Platonist.
does that answer the question as to what the fundamental nature of truth and reality are?
To me, it does. Yeah.
Okay, so then are these things that you believe answer the question as to the nature of truth? Is that a mind? Yes or no?
No.
Okay, good. Then you do have access to it. So you're not so you deny God.
But Platonism could also. Platonism could, in theory, be consistent with theism as well.
Then it's not an answer to what the nature of truth is then, as I'm talking about it. Because we're talking about the foundational nature of what it means for things to be actual, okay, what it means for things to be intelligible, what the fundamental nature of correlativity and possibility and impossibility are. This is why every single time you try to bring up Platonism, I mentioned that it's not a metaphysic in the context of as we're describing it here.
Okay, if you think
Okay.
that Platonism isn't a metaphysic,
So what is it? So what is it?
I don't know what to
What
say.
is it? I told you not as it's being defined here. If you're gonna pretend like you're just gonna play dumb here, right? Like you don't understand, like you have amnesia as to what I said, like every
Believe
time
me,
it's
I
being brought
remember
up.
what you said more than you do.
Okay,
I
good. Then stop
remember what you
pretending
said
like
more
then stop
than
playing
you do.
dumb. Then stop playing dumb. All right, then
I'm
stop
not
playing
playing
dumb.
dumb.
Right.
I'm not playing
So
dumb.
I made it clear
Okay,
that
hey, look,
that wouldn't be in the
hey,
context of
Jay,
metaphysics
Jay,
as
Jay,
it's been
Jay,
defined here,
Jay,
right?
Jay, you're yelling, you're raising your
Okay.
voice, you're over talking.
I'd like to ask Roger a question here. Okay.
Jay,
So
ask
Roger,
Roger, Jay.
what is your metaphysical framework? You say you
Jay.
have one, which means you have access to it, of course, mentally. So what is your metaphysical framework here
It's a very complicated
that will answer
question,
these
but
questions?
So
in general,
hang on, Roger. It's been a long day. I
yeah.
know Jay wants to continue to press. Are you ready to move on from this conversation? Because you seem frustrated and tired.
Could I
Jay seems frustrated and tired. I'm giving you
could I
both
do
the
something?
option.
Can I do something spicy? I want to put it to a vote by people raising their hands in the audience. If you think that my arguments were more successful, you could raise your hand, and if you think that his arguments were more successful, you could not raise your hand. I'm just curious what people think.
Oh, oh, holy shit! I
No,
mean,
I got plenty of
oh,
disagreement. No worries.
Okay. So what
Oh
is your
no! Look at
metaphysic?
that! Look at that! Oh, okay.
All right. So what is your metaphysic?
That's a majority. Yay! Okay. All right. Okay. I'm fine as long as people think that. Okay. Yeah. What's my metaphysic? Platonism.
Okay. Is that an answer to the fundamental nature of reality as it's been
Yes.
as I've
Yes.
described it?
Yes.
Okay. Does Platonism have a mind as that which is ultimate?
If you're a divine conceptualist Platonist, then yes.
Okay. So Platonism ipso facto does not have anything to do with whether or not a mind is real or not.
Platonism is a particular position about abstract objects. You can either think that
Okay,
those
so then it's not an answer to the question. So what is it in your worldview that is foundational and fundamental? Okay, that will be the basis by which anything is, can be, cannot be. What is it?
uh, abstract objects.
Okay, didn't we go over this in the last conversation?
Yeah, but you
Okay, well, our abstract, well, granting that silly statement, anyways, are abstract objects is God an abstract object?
No, he's concrete.
Good. So then, what you believe as foundational and fundamental would then negate God, correct?
Hang on. Someone apparently they're requesting I bring them up. But yeah. So
So
could you just
you, by
repeat what?
virtue of your position, deny the existence of God, correct? So you're not neutral.
I don't really think I do deny the existence of God. I'm open to
Yes,
God.
you do. Yes, you do. No. Listen, being neutral and being open to God's existence are two different things. Okay? You can hold to a position that the grass is green, but be open that it's a different color. That doesn't mean you don't have a position. So having a position and being open to a different position is two different, wildly different things here. Okay? So your position is that God does not exist. That is your position, and that has been made clear for the umpteenth time to everyone in the room. Okay, and that neutrality towards God, because whatever the answer to that question is, they're going to have access to whether or not, or to what it is, right? If they haven't answered that question, either that thing is a foundational mind or it's not. Okay. Now your position is that it's not a mind, so that means you deny God. That's the end of that conversation, really.
Not
You
really.
deny God's existence. Yes, it
Look,
is. We've had
look,
a conclusion now.
look.
Okay, look,
It
we'll
seems.
let it be the end of that
Yeah,
conversation.
this is
Rico,
just
welcome up,
this is
welcome
not
up
going
to the
anywhere.
room. What have you got for us, Rico?
Well, I just want to understand like neutrality just means that someone suspends belief about whether or not God exists, right? So your argument has to be that someone can't suspend belief about whether or not God exists. So I would like to know the inference rules and the
We already understand that.
propositions.
We already understood. We already went over this.
Well, it should be very
Okay.
simple for you to give me the argument then.
We already went over this, Rico. Did you not understand what was said here earlier?
Well, what's the first premise?
Okay, what did I say, Rico?
I don't know. What's the first premise of your argument?
Okay,
Tell
well
me.
then, if you weren't listening, then that's not. I'm not going to be interested. I'm not interested in
Well,
continuing
is
this.
it a simple argument or not? Do
Okay,
you even know the form of the argument?
You're another one. You're another one of the thugs. Okay, that I always talk about. You're another one of Jack Antrax's goons.
What's the
I'm
form
not
of the
interested.
argument?
I'm not interested in speaking with you. Okay.
Okay, Roger, do you know the form of the argument?
Jrobin's
So
argument.
Roger, is that all that you wanted to say? Now that we understand that you deny the existence of God, is that all? Is everything else clear?
You could
Well, but
just
I
say
just
isn't Burger
before we get
King
on to that, hold on,
having your
before we get
way.
on to that, wait, before we get on to that,
Oh,
I just want to figure
Roger,
out. Sorry, stop
I
interrupting
didn't
me.
hear an answer to that
Before we
question,
get on,
Roger.
right? But I asked
Roger,
Roger
can
a
you please,
question.
Roger,
Well, I asked
I can't
Roger a
hear you.
question, so
Well,
I asked
Roger, if you
Roger a
don't say
question.
anything now, but Roger, if you don't say anything now, just assume that we're done with the conversation,
I
okay?
asked Roger a question, right? My question was if he
Okay, we're done with
understood,
the conversation? Okay, that's
if
fine.
he knew what the form of the argument was that J. Robin gave that
Modus
says
ponens.
that someone can't suspend belief
It's modus
that God
ponens.
exists.
It's modus
Okay,
ponens.
so what's the first premise of his argument?
Oh wow, he's gone. Okay. The first premise of his
Of
argument.
course, he runs from,
Wait,
he
could
runs
you?
because the first time,
Okay,
yeah,
sorry. Like my
I just,
social battery is going very low, and I just, I want to say some
okay,
things.
yeah, go ahead.
Look, I hope that I was getting a little bit enervated because I just felt like I was being badgered constantly, which just like threw me off a little bit. But I hope that I was nonetheless making coherent points. I mean, it's difficult to sometimes talk when you're being yelled over perpetually. So yeah. Anyway, just going back to what his argument was. His argument was if you affirm a proposition, then you affirm a metaphysical worldview. Um, if you affirm a metaphysical worldview, then that metaphysical worldview either affirms or denies the existence of God. Therefore, if you make a proposition, you're affirming or denying the existence of God. That was basically his argument.
So what was the justification for the first premise?
Hang on, sorry, I'm
Because
getting
presumably,
like inundated with messages. Sorry, it's just I'm being very distracted.
well,
I'm like,
but you
sorry.
agree with me that you don't think that the first premise is justified,
So,
right? Like you can
so real quick,
affirm.
real quick, just anybody wants to raise their hand, please raise your hand and let's open it up.
You agree with me that you can affirm some proposition without infirming all the entailments of the proposition or whatever, right? I mean, that's basically what he's saying, right?
People talk. I need to take a break.
Okay.
I just want to say that was quite well done, Roger. I want to applaud your restraint and your eloquence, and so I think in general it goes to show that this is a great example of how you could try to have a conversation with somebody, but if the other person is not necessarily interested in having a conversation, if it's more of a monologue, it makes the whole thing kind of an exercise in futility.
So anybody else want to come up, just raise their hand. Let's open it up, maybe have a little discussion.
Well, it's too bad he ran away, you know.
Yeah, Rico, do you want to say what you were going to say? I think everybody'd be interested.
Oh yeah, I mean, there wasn't much to say. I mean, I think that you can. First of all, I would be skeptical that any given proposition implies that God does or doesn't exist. So I wouldn't know why, if Roger's representation was faithful, I don't know why one would accept either of those premises, right?
Right. No,
Because
yeah. Could I just the reason why I did that was just because I was just going to be met with far too much resistance if I rejected that. I think that there are other additional arguments that one could level against the entire structure of the argument in general. And by structure, I don't mean launching an argument against the validity of modus ponens, but just saying, like, look, there are these other considerations that, when factored in, sort of cast doubt on the argument as a whole. Like, sure, I can concede that this argument is valid, but it doesn't prove the thing that you want to prove. And the thing that you want to prove is whether or not agnosticism is possible or impossible. That's just not the conclusion of the argument that you're giving. We don't know all of the entailments of our beliefs henceforth. So I can't say I know those things, even if it is an entailment. So even if I grant this argument, it's still not going to work. So going through the minutia of an argument that doesn't really set out what it's supposed to do, I thought was a waste of time.
right. Well, I mean, you basically are saying what I said, only less succinctly, that there's no reason to accept either premise, right?
I don't know. I just
Well, let's just look at your representation. You said if someone affirms a proposition, then they affirm a worldview, which means basically all of all that proposition entails. Someone affirms a proposition, therefore they affirm all that proposition entails, right? And then there's like a supplementary argument. If someone affirms all the propositions that are entailed by some proposition, then they either affirm God exists or doesn't, or they don't.